We are 3 or 4 days now into the 60-day negotiation period that's going to, we hope, bring an end to the Iran war. But already, as expected, it's getting very complicated and very messy, mainly because both sides are saying different things about the same sort of issues. So the one that matters to most of the rest of us is the Strait of Hormuz. Now, there have been some transits of ships. On Monday, 42 ships passed through the Straits, about 20 going inwards, 22 going outwards. Yesterday, Tuesday, 31 ships went through the Straits. I think it was 11 coming in, 20 odd going out. It's the ships coming in that in a way are more important, because that shows some confidence that ships are prepared to come into the Strait on the assumption that they'll be able to get out again. The problem is that both sides are saying something different about the transit through the Straits. The IMO, the International Maritime Organization, is trying to evacuate 11,000 seafarers who are stuck on the wrong side of the Gulf. And they're saying to ships, go to the waiting area and we'll give you a route out. The problem is there are two routes out that are being talked about. The Iranians are saying, that's fine, you can leave, but you've got to come round Larak Island, north or south of Larak, before you go out through the Straits. What the IMO are saying is, no, you've actually got to take the Guardian Angel route, the route that the Americans pioneered about a month ago, which is right up the coast of Oman, right round the point there, the Al Jabal point, keeping right to the coast. And the problem here is that this is not a great route. There are all sorts of issues here. I mean, the depth is only about 25 meters at this point, and the depth isn't great either around Larak Island. The problem is that the traffic separation scheme, the route that is normally taken there, is probably mined. So all of the ships that go out have got to go either a northern route or a southern route. There's a further problem. The Iranians are saying, unless you come round our route, the northern route, then we can't guarantee your safety. And the Americans are saying, unless you come out of the southern route, if you take the northern route, then your insurance may be invalid and you might be breaking sanctions. And so a lot of the ship owners and their crews find themselves quite genuinely caught between a rock and a hard place. And for that reason, they're doing nothing and they're just waiting to see what happens next. But if we look at what is actually happening, you can see that there is a reasonable amount of transit in and out. So those are the ships that are going on the northern route by Larak Island. Here are the ships that are on the Guardian Angel route around the coast of Oman. If you look at this sort of traffic, it's not unreasonable, but it's about 25% of the 130 odd transits you would expect to see going through the Gulf on any given day. The next big area of ambiguity is over the nuclear sites in Iran. Now, all of this hinges on the IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Agency. And the Americans have been saying, President Trump and Vice President Vance are saying that the IAEA are going in. Trump said they'll be going in by the end of the week. And the Iranians said, well, no, we've got no agreement. Today, Rafael Grossi, who's the chief of the IAEA, said, yes, of course we will be going in. That's part of the deal. But we have no idea when or where or under what circumstances. The Americans want them to go, of course, to Fordo, Natanz and Isfahan, which are the key nuclear sites that were bombed. The Iranians really don't want that for all the reasons we can imagine. What will probably happen is that the IAEA will be able to go to Bushehr. That was the original research reactor from years ago, which went onto the grid. So that's the only nuclear power station that the Iranians have in their whole energy grid. That's relatively uncontroversial. I would imagine that the IAEA would start by going to Bushehr. It'll be a long time, I think, before they visit the other sites. And while these ambiguities are holding up negotiations and making for a great deal of confusion, the Iranians are actually getting some immediate benefit. Their frozen assets around the world come to something between $100 and $120 billion. They were promised over this 60-day negotiation period that they'd get at least 24 billion of those in two tranches of 12 billion. That may or may not happen, and J.D. Vance has said, well, it certainly won't happen unless they keep their promises. Well, what is already happening is that there is 6 billion worth of frozen assets held in Qatar that were South Korean assets. And these assets were released in 2023 as part of a hostage deal, which Joe Biden did with Iran. But the assets only got as far as Qatar, where they stayed. And those assets have now been released, and so the Iranians have got those 6 billion or access to that 6 billion immediately. The Americans say it's for strictly humanitarian purposes. The Iranians say we'll spend it on what we like, so they're getting some immediate economic benefit before they've delivered anything other than promises and frustration. The other problem for President Trump is Congress. Yesterday, both houses of Congress concluded concurrent motions. That was the same wording invoking the 1973 War Powers Act to say that the president had to have congressional approval now for any further operations in this war. Constitutionally, it's not binding. The president will ignore it. But the fact that Congress has voted this way, the first time that Republicans in the Senate have gone in with the Democrats, indicates that, in fact, Congress is reflecting American public opinion in its disquiet with what this war is actually doing. And so it comes down to a battle of wills over the next 60 days, in theory. The Americans are saying that they will hold the Iranians' feet to the fire. They won't get any rewards until they deliver. The Iranians are saying, we'll do it our way. And the fact is that the deal that was concluded, the MOU, had more holes in it than a Swiss cheese. And they thrive on that. The Iranians are really good at working with ambiguity, at making negotiations go on forever. The Americans are very impatient. The truth is, the American position, political position, is weakening all the time. And the longer this process goes, the weaker it will probably get. The bottom line is that on the 7th of March, just a week after the bombing started, President Trump wrote on social media that I demand the unconditional surrender of Iran, the unconditional surrender. Well, if anything, the boot is now on the other foot. The Iranians, I think, are in control of this process. The Americans are certainly not going to surrender unconditionally, but what we can already see happening is that the Americans are progressively surrendering their political position. And the Iranians, they know they'll keep this process going way after 60 days. The Americans, after 60 days, will be that much nearer the November midterm elections. They're running out of time. The Iranians are not.